Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the Swanky Productions channel. My name is Ben. This is my 2022 Gen 3 KLR 650. Back behind it there, we've got the 2021 Tenere 700. And if you guys missed it, I've been out testing both this bike and this bike at the same time a couple different days, and then I put out a couple different videos on things that I've noticed just jumping right from one to the other. The bars on the KLR are definitely comfortable for cruising, but if you're looking to do any hardcore off-road riding at all, or really any off-road riding at all, these feel pretty cramped and uncomfortable. It kind of feels like you're riding a beach cruiser bicycle through a dirt bike track. Whereas the bars on the T7 are much higher and also a lot straighter. They're actually too straight from the factory, so I've got the Tusk chub bar in the YZ bend on here. And this bike does come standard with a 1 1/8 fat bar on it. The KLR 650 has to have this cross brace in between here because this is just a 7/8 bar. So today what I'm gonna do is swap these out for another Tusk chub bar, but this is gonna be the ATV high rise. And to make those work on the KLR, I'm gonna need this universal big bar clamp from Tusk. And then I picked up the 1 1/8 fat bar pad so I don't bash my face on my bars. These actually say KTM high bend on them, which I'm not sure if KTM high bend and ATV high bend are the same thing. Maybe I'll have to take a look at the website, but I think these look like the right ones. I guess we'll see. These are gonna be the same height, more or less, and then they're gonna have a bit less sweep, actually quite a bit less sweep, but I think they should still be more than comfortable enough. And I guess I won't really know until I get some actual ride time on this. Before that can happen though, we've got to get these things swapped out, so let's do that. The KLR bars are quite a bit longer than really any aftermarket bar that you buy. I think there are maybe a few options out there that you could get the same width, but honestly, these bars are more than wide enough. I cannot imagine why you'd want anything that big. I feel like you actually have a little bit better control with something a little bit smaller, so you have a little bit less mechanical advantage on the bike. Now, if you notice, I didn't remove these, and that's because these are made for, well, a 7/8 bar. This bar tapers from 1 1/8 inch here down to 7/8 for your controls, but in that in-between section here where this needs to clamp onto, this is kind of somewhere in the middle of those two dimensions. So you essentially need one of these that is designed to go on this bar. And luckily, I actually bought a set of bark busters that have a clamp just like that back when I got the Tenere 700. I've since switched those out for a set of the D-Flex Adventure handguards, which I really like. The bark busters I just kind of laying around, and I kind of like how they look on the KLR, so I'm gonna steal this piece off of here. The other thing that I'm sure some of you guys already know about is the holes in here for locating and keeping the controls in place. Those are a little bit of a pain in the butt to try to replicate on a bar like this, especially since you're gonna have to get them drilled before you ever take the bike out for a test ride. And for me, that alone is enough of a reason to just nip the nubs off inside of the controls. I have done that on every single bike in the garage here, plus at least one other, and I've never had a grip slip. So this is the backside of the throttle perch, and I'm actually just gonna try to pull this off with a set of pliers here. That worked quite well. And before I stick this back together, something that kind of tripped me up a little bit was the orientation of the cables in here. You've got the cable without the adjuster that runs in first, then that cable runs down into that recess, hooks up on the back side of the throttle tube. The other one is hooked onto the other side here, and that is the one with the adjuster and this little cable plastic chase there. And this one is gonna go just on top of this cable, slipped in here with this slot over the top of the little blockade there. And that just kind of all gets pinched together in there, and then this fits up on the backside. So the conversion riser is pretty simple. You've got this nub that sits down in the original bar location, and then this larger portion, of course, clamps your new 1 1/8 bar. This cap comes off, and then inside of it, you've got the little recess in here to tighten this down to the bike. So that's not good. It looks like these fasteners are bottoming out inside of the original clamp here before they can actually clamp this down. Yeah, it looks like that is quite a bit more thread sticking out of the bottom there. So I guess what I'm gonna do is pull those out and then grind a little bit of the end off of them and kind of clean up the threads so I can put them back in. So with my bench grinder, I just ground these down quite a bit and then cleaned up the edges. I took a decent amount of material off of this, but I made sure not to take off so much that I would end up with any less threads than I originally had with the stock clamps. And because I messed with the end of the threads, I'm gonna be super careful when I go to put them back in. So obviously having to cut the fasteners down isn't the greatest thing, but they are a universal part technically, so not all that surprising. Pretty happy with how they fit up otherwise. So now we can finally drop the bars on. And put the clamps down just enough that they're not gonna fall. And then once I've got both of the top clamps in place, I'm just gonna use the nice markings that they've got on here to make sure that the bars are centered. And I'll probably start somewhere around the 0 position, meaning that this mark in the center with the 0 next to it is kind of dead center in the clamps. And then once I've got everything else fitted up and I can kind of do a bar swing check to make sure nothing's gonna crash into any of the fairings or the windshield, then I can kind of go back and adjust these as needed. I'll probably also switch them up about 6 or 7 times after I do some actual test riding. But I've got to say that definitely looks a lot more aggressive right there. And I think maybe if I can tilt them a little bit farther forward. Oh man, I don't even know if I'll have to. I think those might be right about perfect there. But I guess there's only one way to find that out for sure. So I'm gonna get all of this stuff back on the bars, getting everything tightened down, and then we can take it out and test it. So as always, fitting handguards is the longest part of the process for me. I've tried so many different combinations, I've lost count at this point. These are all completely what I pulled off of the Gen 2, with the exception of the clamps. So if you look at this portion here, you can tell that this side has a little bit less material. This sort of slopes up and to the right here, meaning that the side that they've got these 2 slots cut into would fit on the big side of the bar, which would be the lower side. And just real quick, if you guys are unfamiliar with these, if you've got an aftermarket bar that does not have a threaded insert in it, essentially what you get is this little expansion nut here that slides into this sleeve, kind of blowing that up when you tighten this in. So you will need to pick up something like that, but it looks like otherwise a universal set works, and really no matter what set you decide to stick on, you're probably gonna have to do some amount of bending. Just a combination of universal handguards and aftermarket bars, it just requires a little bit of customization to make them work out, but it seems like these should work out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the amount of protection for the levers that I'm getting, and the wind protection for my hand looks like it's pretty good. I did end up running all my cables on top of the brackets here, and looked like that was gonna be the best scenario here. We're not putting really any stress at all on any of the cables. Now, of course, not bumping into the fairing up there is important, but the other thing you want to check is that you're not going to be running into the tank at all. And it looks like that should not be an issue. And the other thing you want to do is make sure that when the bars are locked all the way one way and the other, that you're not putting any stress on any of your cables. And it seems like all mine are pretty happy where they're at. So the only thing left to do is put blue Loctite on any of the fasteners that I haven't Loctited yet, and then make sure everything's snugged up, take it out for a ride and see how it feels. So I've been on the bike for about an hour now, and I've done everything from what you're looking at right now to 70 miles an hour indicated on the GPS on the highway, and I've got to say, man, I love these bars. I cannot believe I wasted any time at all with those stock bars on here. You would think those having more sweep would make them slightly more comfortable on the road, but honestly, I mean, I think these are like just the absolute sweet spot. Just being a little bit higher is super nice, and having the slightly straighter bar definitely makes this feel a little bit more like the Tenere 700, maybe even a little bit more like, I guess, just a standard motorcycle. They just feel right. And honestly, I mean, I just kind of lucked out with the way that I placed them. Standing up on the road, I like to kind of stand up in like a straight line position where my knees are almost buckled and where my back is straight, but still having my torso just kind of in an upright position as much as I can. And now I'm able to do that, where before I wasn't. I was kind of still having to hunch over a little bit. Now, as far as buzzing goes, at 70 miles an hour indicated again on the GPS, they definitely are not any worse than the stock bars. I'm afraid to say that they're better, because I mean, obviously that's kind of hard to quantify, but I want to say the last time that I was out doing 60 miles an hour for an extended period of time, I want to say my right hand kind of started to feel a little bit buzzed and numb. And I mean, these bars definitely still vibrate a little bit. I mean, even the bars in the Tenere 700 vibrate a little bit, especially after 5,500 RPM. I don't think anybody would complain about how much these vibrated, really. And especially being attached to a single cylinder, they really felt pretty darn good. And I think that slightly straighter bar, and I say straight, obviously they're not straight, but having them a little bit less like a beach cruiser going around the corners was so much more confidence inspiring too. I mean, obviously this isn't a sport bike. It's still not a Tenere 700 out on the road, but man, it really does feel so much better. And I mean, I was definitely somebody that was kind of hesitant to want to switch bars out on bikes. I tried risers on the Tenere 700 before I put the new bars on that, and man, I mean, it definitely, especially for somebody as picky as me, it is a bit of a process to get everything switched over and to get everything, you know, figured out and just where you want it. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. And honestly, I mean, it is definitely worth it. And I mean, especially if you go with the Tusk products, I mean, this stuff is so inexpensive. I mean, this compared to a set of Rox risers, that, you know, you're still gonna end up with your same goofy beach bike bars on. I mean, it's got to be cheaper, right? I mean, I think it has to be, I guess, depending on what kind of risers you go with. And I personally would not go with cheap risers. You guys are dragging on the ground again. Yeah, this is definitely more confidence inspiring on the trail as well. I'm kind of chasing the feeling of the Tenere 700, but honestly, I mean, I think this bike is definitely, today was definitely more comfortable, and I guess it always kind of has been, but it's still more comfortable on the pavement than the Tenere 700, just because the bars are a little bit closer to you. And, you know, I'm kind of thinking that maybe that's a problem off-road, but honestly, the only time that the bars being close to you really is going to be an issue is, and then not too close, but as close as they are, the only time this is really going to be an issue is when I'm standing straight up. And honestly, when you're off-road, you should not be standing straight up. You should be in the attack position with your butt kind of stuck out behind you, and, you know, your legs kind of hanging out at a decent angle, and your feet kind of sort of in the middle, and your arms outstretched in front of you. And I mean, that's exactly what I've got going on here. And as much as I'd like to say I wish the bars were a little bit further forward, honestly, it's probably better that they're not. Now, obviously, if you're a different frame size than I am, maybe that will be slightly different for you. I think this is the trail. And I guess I don't know that I mentioned that. Hopefully I did. If I didn't, I am about 5'10" with a 31-inch inseam. I just do not want to get off the bike to fix that camera, but I really should. Hey there, little deer. Oh, wow. That is ridiculously loose. Okay. Well, I think that's about as good as we're going to get. I don't know if the clamp's just getting weak or what the deal is. And that won't be goofy at all. Oh, well. So one thing I should probably mention is that my promise about the controls never spinning, of course, had to be proved wrong on the KLR. So the throttle side, which is the important one, of course, does not move. It doesn't seem like, I guess maybe if you're really reefed on it, you could get it to. But if you have to twist your throttle that hard to get it to move, then I think you got some other problems going on. This side, it moves a little bit. Whoops. Horn still works though. Obviously that's not the greatest thing, but honestly, I mean, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I thought about throwing some tape in there, but I mean, I'm not pressing any of those buttons hard enough to make it move anyways, so I'm just not going to worry about it, at least for now. It's just something you're going to have to decide on your own. Wow, that kind of looks like a lot of rain. I didn't think it was supposed to rain. It's going to be a long ride home if it's going to be in the rain. Oh, and you may have noticed I don't have the Tusk bar pad on here. It seemed like it fit okay around the risers. However, it stuck out a little bit too far. When I would crank the bars all the way right, all the way left, it would bump up against the tank, and the outer labeled part of it would kind of get bent over and make a weird clicking noise. So I just decided, forget it. I don't think I'm ever gonna hit my head on that, and I guess if I do, I'll be wearing my helmet, so hopefully I don't break my camera if it ever does happen. That feels good on the jumps. Woo! Yeah, they feel real good. Oh yeah, I feel like I am definitely more in control when I'm riding this a little bit harder like this. That is so much better of a position to be in, and having them a little bit straighter like a motocross bike would be definitely feels much more at home out on the trails. And I don't think you can ask more from them than that, being still comfy out on the road and feeling like you're in control and like you're on the right type of machine for the terrain. Woo! Oh, we're going over there. It is definitely a good feeling, and obviously, like I said earlier, a good combination to have and kind of the sweet spot. So I think this is definitely a win for these type of trails, and it definitely feels good today. One thing that I do plan on doing in the future is kind of circling back to the reason that I finally decided to switch these bars out, and that was a couple rides with my dad where we did just jump right back and forth between the two bikes on and off the road. And I'm interested to see when we do that how he thinks these feel and how I feel going from one to the other. And I think maybe we'll try to get out and do a little bit of that Taylor County single track sometime. We might end up doing a ride out here or somewhere else a little bit closer to home before then. Got to make sure I get home to spend time with the kids, of course, but I do plan on doing a head-to-head comparison at some point. I do also plan on swapping out the grips on here for something else that I've already got ordered, actually. And before it gets chilly out, I do have a set of the Tusk grip heaters that I will be putting on this bike, and I think I know of a location that I can tap into. Woo! So we don't have to run anything to the battery at all. We can just tap right into something under the fairing here, which would be pretty slick. So take care, stay safe, stay swanky. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my trails here today. Make sure you get out and enjoy some trails for yourself whenever you can. If you can't do that right now, here's some more videos to check out in the meantime, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see new videos every weekend.